Welcome, my friend. Welcome to the show. My name is Anne. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to share this show with you where we're going to explore the magic of surrender with Kute Blackson. Riveting, very interesting interview. I had so much fun in this interview, and I'm excited to hear your feedback. I'm excited for you to experience it. I'm excited if you have anything to say to continue the conversation. So I'm going to share with you this interview, and then I will pull a few cards for the week ahead. Tune into the collective energy. That's how the show usually goes. It was quite a serendipitous, synchronicitous interview. That's not a word, but I'm using it as a word. I'm not sure. Synchronicitous. It was an interview of synchronicity. I had been exploring themes about divine surrender right before reading Kute Blackson's fabulous book. I had just had a conversation with my friend right before this interview about the law of attraction and surrender and control and how it all fits together or not. And I think that the part in the interview where Kute Blackson and I discuss surrender as it relates to the law of attraction is very interesting. It's a topic that interests me quite a bit, and I thought his remarks on it were quite poignant. I'm interested to hear if you have a thought on this subject. So let me introduce our guest for today. Kute Blackson is a beloved inspirational speaker and transformational leader. He is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council, a select group of 100 of the world's foremost authorities in the personal development industry. He's the winner of the 2019 Unity New Thought Walden Award, and he's widely considered a next generation leader in the field of personal development. So please enjoy this interview with the amazing Kute Blackson. Please check out his book, The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go. Without further ado, please enjoy this interview. And I want to welcome Kute onto Integrative Mystic. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So I always like to ask authors who come onto my show, Kute, The Magic of Surrender. First of all, let me plug your book here. The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go by Kute Blackson. It was just released recently, I believe. And I have been reading it and have been just like blown away by the stories you tell and by the way you're explaining surrender. So I highly recommend it to my viewers and listeners and audience. Kute, can you just tell us what inspired you to write this book?
I would first say, this is not the book I wanted to write. This is not the book I thought I was going to write. I had my own agenda for the book I wanted to write, the book I thought I should write, the book I thought that publishers would want, the book I thought my audience would want, the book I thought would be a bestseller. And so I sat down one day after my first book was a national bestseller, and I thought, I'm going to really create a mega bestseller now with all of my willpower and intention and creativity and strategy. I sat and I had an entire whiteboard full of ideas and concepts and, brilliant titles and topics. And when I really meditated on it and I looked at this board, none of it really, if I was honest, none of these really felt authentic. None of these felt truly, truly aligned. The only word that felt really aligned and in true integrity was the word surrender. And I remember seeing that and feeling the energy and feeling the resonance, and there was an initial moment of resistance. I thought, oh, shoot, I don't know if I want to write about that, because it's, it's something that we have so many misconceptions about. It's something that we kind of intuitively feel and sense we need to do, but we resist, like going to the dentist, in that sort of sense. And so there was an initial resistance to acknowledging that this was the book. And so I had to go through a process of surrendering to the book about surrender. And when I did, I really felt as though the book had a soul of its own. The book had an energy of its own. The book had its own life, its own intention, its own journey. And so when I surrendered, I just felt like it was as though it came together. It was as though all the elements of the book that were needed came together, and I began to understand my life. I began to understand everything I'd been through and everything and how everything in my life was totally interconnected, and how everything in my life was actually preparing me to be the perfect person to write this book. Everything from my childhood, everything from my parents, everything from how they met. After so many things made sense. And so I said yes to the book. And as I was in that moment, I flashed back a few years before, and I saw that the seeds for this specific book were planted maybe 2016, 2017, but I didn't know it at the time. In that, in the end of 2016, my mother, who I loved dearly, who was the closest person to me, the person I loved the most. I mean, my mother taught me everything I really know about what love is, real love. And at the end, I think it was September of 2016, I got a phone call that basically told me, I was told that my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And I was totally devastated. And I was living in Los Angeles. My mother's in London. I began flying back and forth from LA to London every month for a week to be with her and take care of her. Then I'd fly back and go back and fly back. And it was an intense year. And what started out as the worst year of my life ended up becoming the best year of my life. And it was profound. And I had no idea what was about to happen. And so when I went to London the first time, I had every intention that I was going to will my mother back into health. She was stage 4 cancer. Things weren't looking good, but I had every intention. I was going to will my mother into health. I was going to get her better. I was going to feed her green powders, and I was going to just make her well again. And after a few months, I kind of started feeling and sensing that she had her own journey. And so I began a process of surrendering and accepting and just being with her. And so I'd go with my mother into her chemo sessions, and I would just hold her hand for 8 hours, and we would talk about life and talk about everything and nothing. And it was beautiful, just to celebrate the sacred, special moments, the ordinary moments with my mother. And about 7 months into this process, the doctors finally said, I'll never forget the day when we went into the doctor's office, and the doctor said, look, there's nothing we can do for you. Basically, you're going to die. So get your affairs in order. And we don't know how long it's going to be. It could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, but it certainly won't be years. So it's close. And I remember feeling a deep, profound sense of heartbreak, because as much as you prepare for that moment, nothing prepares you for that particular moment. And so I remember looking my mother in the eyes, a little Japanese woman. And I said to my mother, holding her hand, 2 questions. I asked her, firstly, are you afraid? The moment is coming. Are you afraid? They say you're going to die. And she looks me in the eyes and she says, I'm not afraid. And I said, why? You're going to die, Mom. She said, I know I'm not this body. This body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. And I will be with you from the other side. I'll be guiding you from the other side. And so she had such a profound peace and freedom in knowing who she was. And then I asked her a second question that I think you could say was the inspiration for the book, but I didn't know it, where I looked her in the eyes and I wanted to be a good son, because I kind of felt a lot of regret during this time, a sacred kind of regret. Because I realized the only regret I had in my life was not spending more time with my mother. I was so busy traveling the world, inspiring the world, that many things I didn't think were that important. And so I looked my mother in the eyes, wanting to be a good son. And I said to her, like, is there anything that I can do for you in your final days? What do you need? What do you want? What can I buy? Where can I take you? And she said to me, there's nothing that I need and there's nothing that I want. The only thing I want is what God wants for my life. And in that moment, I saw that she was free. In that moment, I experienced and felt the embodied reality of the power of surrender, not just when you get everything you want and life's going your way and you manifest everything, not just like in the Himalayas on a mountaintop, but in real, raw, everyday life, a woman facing her mortality, that she was going to die. She was at peace. She wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was completely surrendered to the highest unfolding of her soul. And I think that's, so when I was looking at this whiteboard and I was reflecting on that moment, everything made sense. That's when I saw that surrender was her key. Surrender was the password to freedom. Surrender is the key to true power, to true living, to true fulfillment. That surrender is the key to the next level of our life. That surrender is the real key to manifestation. And when I look at the truly great ones, you know, I never considered my mother great, but when I look at the truly great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, folks that inspired me, Mandela, Martin Luther King, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, at some point, they all had to surrender themselves to a vision that was bigger than themselves. They all had to surrender themselves to the divine, to the universe, to their soul, to a calling that was bigger than them. And when they truly let go and surrendered, it was as though they transcended their own human limitations and tapped into another dimension of potential. And that's when I think the magic happens. That's when life, you know, God, the divine, the universe began to manifest through them. And so that's what really inspired, you know, the book.
Oh, that is so beautiful, Kute. That's so beautiful. And you know, when you're talking, it reminds me of the Tao Te Ching and the concept of the yin and yang, and you know, the way, the Tao, and how Lao Tzu talks about in the sacred text yielding and the power of the yin, the power of yielding, the power of really surrender. And I see it as, you know, us embracing collectively more the paradigm of surrender as empowering. I also see that as connected with embracing the yin and the feminine and the divine feminine collectively, that yielding isn't weak, that, you know, as you talked about in your book about the element of water, and I think you were quoting Bruce Lee, maybe I'm wrong, but you were talking about the element of water and how you were discussing with someone how it's powerful and its powers and its ability to change and flow and change forms. And you know, that idea of us yielding and being adaptable and opening ourselves to change and opening ourselves as a vessel is I think, you know, something collectively we're embracing and sort of redefining outside of religious dogma what that experience is. So I love how you describe that, Kute. I also wanted to, I'm so fascinated by creative, just creatives process, creative writers, creative artists, creative anybody. And I love how you described in this process of writing the book that you thought that it should be something, and I've experienced this too. You had this idea for what it should be, and you started writing it, and then some magical process happened in which you came up against a wall, you came up against this resistance and realized this isn't working, and then shifted into a surrender, and then the book kind of formed itself. I was listening to, did you see the Andy Warhol documentary on Netflix? It was really interesting, and they interviewed all sorts of artists connected with him and just artists in the scene. And one of the artists they were interviewing talked about, you know, the creative process for him and art wasn't just about like regurgitating a vision he had in his mind onto the canvas. He was discovering the content and discovering how he wanted to express himself as he created his painting. And you know, you hear authors and creatives talk about that's the most sort of effective or successful or magical kind of approach to creating something, is that surrender. And a lot of times you can't start there, though. You have to just start with, like, you know, you talk a lot about ego and how it, you know, we shouldn't throw the ego away. It's an important part of our consciousness structure. And I agree. And how where was I going with this, Kute? So being able to surrender as a part of that process. And I lost my train of thought here, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. But yeah, I love how you described, you know, going through that process and yeah. So what I was saying, okay, it came back. all of the smoke from Canada is polluting the air, and it's fogging my mind. So I affirm my mind is clear, and peace and healing to my northern neighbors. So sometimes we have to start out though, and we don't know. Would you agree with this? We have to start out maybe not knowing how to surrender, that we're just starting out with an idea, and then through a process we come to understand that we are attached, that we do have these preconceived notions that we are forcing in some way in order to arrive at the surrender, and then come upon the innovative genius idea.
Mm-hmm. Is there a question, or is there something?
I mean, would you agree with that? Is that part of your experience? Or do you think you can start in a place of surrender in the
Look,
creative?
I would say that surrender is a natural state of our being. I would say surrender is our innate nature. Surrender is what we are. We've just kind of lost touch with that naturalness of being surrendered. You know, if you look at a child, the child is a baby. You know, when they're born, they're surrendered. That's just their nature. And I would actually say that yes, surrender, and we can talk about it, but surrender can feel hard and seem hard and difficult. I won't deny that it can feel that way, but it's actually easy. It's just that we've been conditioned out of it through experiences and childhood things and traumas and conditioning. And so, like, I'm making a fist right now, and for those listening, and I have a pen in my hand, and I'm making this fist, and I'm tightening this fist, and I'm holding. If I hold this fist long enough in this posture, and I hold this pen, this fist tightened position feels natural, but it's not. It's just a conditioned sort of holding. If I say let go and surrender, it's like, okay, let go and surrender. The truth is, letting go of this pen and just, that is what is most natural. That is what is most effortless. It's just that we've been conditioned through certain experiences to hold on to a way of being. And so if you look at a child, we were free. We were surrendered. A child cries when they feel like crying, and they poop when they feel like pooping, and they, you know, hit their head and they cry, then they're over it, and they'll jump on the table completely naked and sing. They don't have that sense of fear and self-consciousness. They'll sing at the top of their lungs. They don't care if they don't sound like, you know, Bruno Mars or Celine Dion. They're just pure beingness. They are surrendered in nature. And so what happens to us when we start losing touch with the naturalness of surrender? The first thing is we're born, we incarnate into this human experience. We meet our parents, and our parents, you know, God bless them, they're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their childhood and their conditioning. And so two things happen. We're born into a kind of a preset pattern of conditioning. And the first thing is, maybe let's say dad was crazy, maybe mom is an alcoholic, maybe they're fighting, maybe there's pain, trauma, dysfunction, emotional, sexual, spiritual, whatever it is, certain types of abuse. Maybe they were great people, but they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs, and that was painful. And so the first thing is we learn all sorts of, let's say, strategies, often which are unconscious, to shut down, disconnect, and not feel, as a way of protection and survival. And we start suppressing our feelings, suppressing our emotions, and we now start kind of disconnecting from the free-flowing essence of what we are. And often through decades of suppressing emotions, our true surrendered nature kind of gets hidden underneath the layers of emotion, and we erect walls around our heart and become closed as a protection and survival way of being, to not feel the pain of feeling our needs aren't met. And then we learn a way of being, the sense of who do I need to be to get love and validation and approval, and we become, often unconsciously again, who we think we need to be in order to be loved and validated and fit in, and, you know, have mom and dad love us. And now we kind of contort ourselves into this version of ourselves, thinking that's who we are, but it's who we're not. And so the degree to which we're conditioned is the degree to which we're not free. The degree to which we're conditioned and identify as this version of ourselves that we become, which really is ego, right? The degree to which we identify with that is a degree to which we're often not in touch with being surrendered, with the flow, with our true nature. And so to me, the ego, that which we mistakenly believe ourselves to be, the ego, it's the ego, the perception of ourselves that resists surrender. It's the ego that is terrified of surrender. And for the ego, surrender feels like a death. And so the degree to which we're identified with ourselves as this ego structure, we often avoid and resist letting go and surrender, because the ego's job is to protect you from getting hurt, because the ego is kind of a reaction to certain things that happen. The ego's job is to protect us from getting hurt, like we were hurt when we were 5 and 10 and 15. And so often what works for us when we were 5 maybe works for us when we're 15, maybe when we're 20, but by the time we hit 25 and 35 and 45, it starts limiting us and inhibiting our capacity to be surrendered and flow and let go and embrace and trust. And the ego's job is also to reinforce its existence. And so it's the ego that resists surrendering because it feels like a death. And so control, which can be kind of the opposite of surrender, control, and the ways in which we control become the ego's strategy of protecting us to ensure we're not hurt. So I think when we can understand the nature of our resistance, and when we can understand the nature of our disconnection and self-sabotage and resistance, then we can understand the sort of positive intention for the resistance itself. And I think when we can begin to meet our resistances in all the ways we do it, resisting love, resisting receiving love, because we might be afraid that if I receive love, I'm going to be disappointed. If I let love in, I might get hurt again. And so we do all of these ways of resisting and pushing things away. And so I think if we can start observing and understanding the motivation, which is self-protection, then I think we can surrender to even not being surrendered, which is kind of another level of surrender to our resistance, to then being able to hold our fear in our resistance with compassion, with tenderness, with kindness, and not try to make ourselves surrender, but to just hold our resistances with a profound compassion. And that's when there can be relaxation and healing can happen. And then as healing happens, then there's an openness, surrender begins happening. And I think when we can meet ourselves with compassion, healing happens, then we can relax even more. And then we can start letting go of control, and then surrender can begin happening. But I think surrender is our nature.
The power of letting go. In mental health, in the world of psychology, the idea of ego is a little bit different than the world of the self-development metaphysical community. But in both worlds, I believe also that the ego, it's not helpful to think about destroying the ego. In psychology, it's the organizing principle of the psyche. And so different people conceptualize it in different ways, but I love the way that you're talking about it and conceptualizing it, Kute. And I have a question for you. You know, the idea of the ego as being informed by our beliefs. I definitely agree with that. And I see that in my clients, and I teach my clients to get more in touch with what you really believe. And sometimes we're not even conscious of what we believe, and yet that is informing how we are thinking and behaving and vibrating, right? So I wanted to ask you, Kute, sort of in response to what you're describing here so beautifully, do you believe that the ego can be refined, that the ego can be re-educated?
Yeah, to me, I would say the ego is not the issue. The ego is not bad. The ego is not the enemy. The ego is a construct the ego is a pattern. The ego, in the human incarnated experience, we all have an ego. And so ego isn't the issue. I think more of the issue is our relationship with ego and our sense of how identified we are with ego. Because to navigate the human three-dimensional experience that is life, that we all are in, you need an ego. It's just the way it is, you know. And even if you met the Dalai Lama as an example and said, hey, Dalai Lama, or some enlightened being, they would turn around and say, yeah, hi, how are you? You know, how are you? And how are you, Kute? And they wouldn't be able to do that if there wasn't an ego. So to me, the key is having a healthy relationship with the ego. The challenge is, I think, in our culture, we get so attached and identified with the beliefs, the feelings, the emotions, the traumas, the pain, the hurt, the past, the experiences, the successes, the failures, that we start really believing so strongly that this ego structure is the totality of what we really, of what we are. Our
Right.
true nature, our essence is what we are. And so I think that over attachment and identification to the beliefs, the stories, all those things is really more the issue. And so I think if we can recreate our relationship to the ego, then I think it frees us up to have a healthy relationship with it, you know, re-educate ourselves around it, so that when the ego often doesn't want to change, because change for the ego and the degree to which we believe we are the ego and the beliefs and the emotions and the feelings, the degree to which we often believe we're the ego is the degree to which we're often afraid to change, because we believe that if I change, then I'm dying. If I change, then who will I be? And so we often resist change in many ways. And so I think the ego often doesn't want to change, wants everything and everyone else to change, but it doesn't want to change. But when we start understanding that, oh, I have an ego, but I'm not the ego.
Yeah.
Because beliefs change. We don't believe the things we believed 2 years ago. We don't believe the things we believed 5 years ago. The beliefs, the ideologies, religion, the stories, we don't, about ourselves, the many things we don't even believe. So if we are simply our belief structures and values, our values change. If we're simply that as an ego, then who are we when we believe something else? And so I think when we can understand, oh, I have an ego, but I'm not the ego, then I think it can transform your relationship with it to have a healthy relationship with the ego, so that you can honor yourself, honor your beliefs, at least currently as they are, respect yourself, set boundaries, you know, have a healthy sense of self-esteem to navigate the world, and, you know, set those boundaries and have relationships in a healthy way, set prices in a healthy way for work. I mean, so I think that is something that can happen as you have a healthy relationship with an ego to function, you know, in this human experience. While simultaneously, I think it's a paradox, you know, where you're not the ego, but you are the ego, but you're not the ego, but you are the ego. And I think the ability, part of the freedom is the ability to live in that paradox. So, because we're not the ego. And when this mind body physically dies, or when this body changes, because it will, the hair will change, the eye will change, the face will change, we'll get wrinkles, the body changes. So what happens every 7 years? It's said, I mean, I don't know if it's real or not, but it said that our cells completely regenerate. And now every 7 years, then that means we have a completely different body. So if we're just this body, then are we someone different in 7 years? Literally, if we're just this body, then who are we? And so I think that if we can cultivate that healthy relationship, then there's freedom, the ability to embrace that paradox. We live in a infinitely valid but simultaneously contradictory reality. And I think when we can realize, oh, I have an ego, but I'm not the ego. I have an ego, but I'm not the ego. And that relationship can provide some space to play in this human experience as this character, to enjoy it, to celebrate ourselves, to take pride in ourselves, to take pride in our culture, to take pride in our heritages, to take pride in our national, and to just like, yeah, this is who I am. And I'm not. I'm born in Ghana, I'm born in Japan, and my mother's Japanese. I'm part African, I'm part Japanese, I'm part British, I'm part American, and I'm not. And I'm just pure consciousness as a soul. But I can celebrate being Black, Japanese, American, British, and take joy in that whilst holding it with some, whilst not holding on to it tightly. And so
There's some detachment.
It's a relationship with that I think is the key.
The paradox, it's, I am my ego, but I'm not. And understanding that there is a relationship to it because it's not the totality of our consciousness. The way I think about it is the ego is one aspect of our consciousness in this time-space continuum, but we have, you use the words, I believe, pure consciousness. We have more expanded parts of us, and some people might say higher self. Different people use different words to describe that, but one of the things that comes to my mind as you describe in the book, The Magic of Surrender, and in this interview, one of the things that comes to my mind as you describe the ego and how we are not the ego, and yet that is part of our consciousness, is that higher self part of our consciousness, and that we can be in touch with the ego, not attached, not understanding that that's one component of our consciousness, but be in touch. And I think you said this in the book, that to truly surrender is to really tune in and be tapped in and be in touch with this higher consciousness. And I think about my higher self and being in touch with, I use the word spirit, being in touch with spirit, being in touch with my higher self, being in touch with expanded consciousness as a part of consciousness that is interpenetrating this dimension, but also expanded and existing to infinity in realms outside of this time-space continuum. And that as we are in touch with both, that, you know, not denying the ego, not trying to kill the ego, we need the ego in order to exist in this time-space continuum. It helps us understand that, you know, I'm in this little illusion right now that you're separate than me, and we're having this conversation as, you know, two separate entities, and you know, that we have a body and we have this personality, and yet there's this, so we need that in order to actually, you know, play the game. And yet there's this part of us that knows those rules, the part of the ego that really is structured to operate in a world of dichotomy and limitation, and is structured in order to have certain beliefs, in order to have experiences of limitation, in order to grow. That is one part of our consciousness that we're kind of interested in now and playing with and experiencing. And yet, if we get too attached to it and identify with it too much and don't understand that it is like water, it is, you know, flowing, we can reprogram beliefs, we can embody this higher consciousness in this time-space continuum. I feel like that's the best, you know, I was going to say the best of both worlds, but that's not really what I want to say. I think that's the integrative mystic way. That's being able to integrate it instead of throw it away. And I really feel like that's echoed in the book, and, you know, really a lot of spiritual, mystical wisdom tradition teachings. I wanted to ask you, Kute, I talk a lot about the law of attraction, our thoughts create our reality, manifesting. And I have done a lot of reflection on and exploring this concept. And I have my own opinions about the law of attraction. I do believe that it is a universal law that really does exist and that we can work with. And I believe there are other universal laws. But I wanted to ask you, how do you feel like the concept of surrender relates to the law of attraction and the idea that our thoughts create our reality, which doesn't sound like, from, maybe a surface level, a very surrender friendly paradigm. But let me ask you about that.
Yeah, look, I would say our thoughts create our reality. There's partial truth to it, but if that was simply so simplistic, then if you look at half of the authors in The Secret, why are they divorced? Why are they overweight? Why are they challenged? Why are they going through some things? If that was literally the case all the time. And so I think there is a level of truth to, okay, our thoughts create our reality. Does that mean I think a thought and, my soulmate appears? Does that mean I think a thought and my Lamborghini shows up? Does that mean I think a thought and a private jet show? So I think we have to just soften with that because, okay, I think there's many things I'd like to say. The old paradigm, I would say, of creating, of manifesting, was really, I think, about an ego-based model of manifesting life. Know what you want. Get clear on what you want. What do you want? What do I want? Write it down. Write down what you want. Get clear on what you want, and then you go for it and you make it happen. Get clear on what you want and put it on your poster board. What do I want? But we don't ask who is the I that's wanting, because the thing is, sometimes you might manifest. You might, and you can manifest this way. Don't get me wrong. It can be powerful. I agree. But there are limitations because the ego structure, not good or bad, it just is still limited. Because when we're manifesting from the level of the ego, we're not able to see the multi-level dimensional possibilities of life that is seeking to unfold in any given moment. We're locked into a certain viewpoint based on our limited viewpoint of the ego's capacity to see in that moment. So sometimes you might manifest what you thought you wanted and actually manifest it, only to realize that what you thought you wanted was not what you really wanted. It was just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. And often, if you're locked into sort of this ego identification, I want this car, I want that body, I want this, I want to be an actor, I want to win an Oscar, I want the thing, I want the Ferrari, I want the whatever it is. Nothing wrong with it, but sometimes our dreams, goals, desires that we try to manifest can be projections of unmet needs, of wounds from childhood that we then project. And so if we're not in touch with who we truly are, truly, as authentic beings, as authentic humans, as spiritual energies, then often our goals can be projections of those unmet needs, and you might manifest, but you still won't be happy. You might manifest and it won't bring you true, authentic fulfillment. Then you realize that what you're trying to manifest through law of attraction is the ladder's on the wrong wall. And so as it relates to surrender, for me, there's a different question. The question is not, what do I want as a limited individual I? The question becomes, what is it that life, what is it that God, what is it that the universe that I am a part of? I am interconnected with. What is it that life, God, the divine, my soul, what is seeking to manifest through me? What is God seeking to express through me, create through me, podcast through me, speak through me, whatever it is, business through me? What is the deepest impulse of life that is seeking to express through me? And I think for me, then your intention and desire is not arising from the limited ego self. It's arising from a deeper dimension of your being that is not limited to time, space, and your own little limited self. Then you're kind of catching the vision of life and existence. Then you can feel into that and tune into that and embrace that. Then you can bring the ego, the mind, the strategy, the thoughts, the visualizations, the poster board, the journaling, the ghost, in alignment and in sync with what is true. with what is authentic. And I think that's when you're working in harmony with life, with nature, with existence. And so that's a you could say in terms of surrender and manifestation, then it's not you as a separate self that is, I am manifesting this thing. You know, you start realizing that you are not the manifester, you are not the doer. The ego wants to be the one that is always doing it, making it happen, manifesting it, because that sense of doing and control gives the ego a sense of I exist and I'm real. And and so I think when you start realizing that you're not the doer, but life itself is what is doing. You know, Jesus, a great mystic. You mentioned mystic a few times. One of the greatest mystics of all time, Jesus, the Christ, realized his Christ nature, began to see things. He gave us a code for manifestation. Miracle worker, turning water into wine, all these things. He said, it's not I. He didn't say, hey, everyone, I'm Jesus. I'm a badass. I'm amazing. Look at what I can do. Look at all these. He said, it's not I that does the work. It's the Father, the Mother, God, the divine, whatever you want to call it.
The Father. Yeah.
It's the Father that does the work through me. And so in surrender, it's a letting go. It's talk about feminine, right? It's an opening to life so that you can catch that deeper vision of life in its intelligence. That's when life begins to manifest through us. That's when life begins to use us. And I have experienced that what life can do through us is more than what we can do, more than what we could imagine, more than what we could sit down and create with our limited logical mind. And so I would say, catch the vision, then bring the ego in service of the soul, then go into action 100%, using the ego in service to the divine, that soul, that true essence, giving 100% while letting go of the attachment, without being attached to the outcome. And so in terms of the law of attraction, I'll say that you don't get what you want in life. You don't get what you pray about. You don't get what you meditate. You might, but in life, you get what you are. You get what you fundamentally are as a vibrational match. And so I think if people really want to manifest, it's not about making things happen on a human level. It's really about doing the mental, emotional, spiritual, therapeutic, developmental work to heal, to surrender, to clear, to release the beliefs, the old emotions, pain, hurt, trauma, the shame, the guilt, to release that so that you can be available and open to the deeper intuitive inspiration, to the divine ideas flowing through you. Because I think when we do the mental, emotional, developmental, human ego work to clear ourselves, then our vibration shifts. Then we will start vibrating at higher frequencies, not because we're doing a fake affirmation like I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough, I deserve love, I deserve love, I deserve love, but we're actually resonating and vibrating on that level. So we, from that place of true inner alignment on mind, body, heart, spirit, nervous system, we're able to resonate on that level, frequency-wise, and you could say we will attract relationships and situations that reflect our state of being, how we feel about ourselves truly, because we've done the work.
I agree 5,000%. And that's how I think about manifesting too, including the higher self with the ego and going through that process of discovery and unfoldment. And you can feel that you are tuned in when you read your book, Kute. You can feel that you are surrendering, and you really are offering that surrendered vibration when you talk to people, when you speak in front of people, and in this book. We just have a few minutes left. I was wondering if you could offer a quick tip or something for my audience to take away that might help them with the magic of surrender if they wanted to take that first step?
Maybe two steps, maybe one practical step I don't think I've said, but I think if you want to, okay, how do I start? Where do I start? What do I do? Where do I begin? I think one of the things that stops us from surrendering, one of the things that blocks our transformation, one of the things that stops us from going to the next level, one of the ways we keep ourselves stuck are all the lies that we tell ourselves in so many ways. You know, from an ego perspective, we denial is one of the ways that we kind of keep ourselves the same. And if we really want to transform and shift and change and surrender, I think we have to be willing to start telling ourselves the truth. The truth. So ask yourself, what lies am I telling myself? We stay in relationships that we know are not aligned. We work jobs that we often feel are not in alignment with our integrity. We betray ourselves saying yes when we mean no and wonder, why do I feel pain? When we lie to ourselves, pain is feedback. Pain is some part of us communicating to us. And so as a place to begin, like there is no transformation without truth. You can't meditate your way there and pray your way there if you're lying to yourself. And so ask yourself, what lies am I telling myself? And just take the pressure off of yourself of having to take even action. Because sometimes we won't tell ourselves the truth because we're afraid of the consequence if we acknowledge the truth. So we'll kind of like create a smokescreen of confusion. So just start with, okay, I don't have to take action. I don't have to break up. I don't have to get a divorce. I don't have to leave my job. Like nothing has to happen, but I just am going to acknowledge the truth.
Yes.
What is the truth? Wow, I'm not in love anymore. I haven't been in love for 7 years. I hate my job. You know, wow, I have an alcohol problem. I'm not going to deny it. I have a problem with alcohol. That's the truth. Because I think transformation begins when we acknowledge where we're at. And that's the beginning of surrender. So that's one thing I would say. The second thing as a bonus would be really sit with this. You are going to die. You are going to die. There's no way out of this human experience. Your soul is eternal. We're consciousness, we are spirit, we'll live on. But as this physical form, you will die. All the great ones died. If they're going to die, you're going to die. And so I would say, feel your death. Meditate on your death. And ask yourself, am I ready? And if not, why not? And what's ungiven? And what's unsaid? And what's uncommunicated? And what's unexpressed? If death came right now, what regrets would I have? Because when we go and we meet our maker, whatever we believe, we can't ask God, hey, can I get a refund on those 3 years I wasted in that relationship? It's like, it's gone, right? It's gone. And so feel your death, because many times we resist and we waste so much time thinking we have forever, but we don't. But I think when you really feel your death, it kind of sobers you and gets you into relationship with the sacredness of this life and existence and reality. And so meditate on your death and use that as a navigation to bring you back into your truth.
We just got a gift of existentialism, folks, and I love it. Meditate on your death. I mean, is there anything more life-giving than connecting with death? We are running out of time. I know you need to go, Kute, and I wanted to ask you to please let my audience know how they can connect with you, how they can purchase this book, how they can find you.
Sure. I would say a couple of ways. The Magic of Surrender, get the paperback on Amazon. And I wrote it in a very simple way because I wanted people to actually read it.
It's very readable, very readable.
I wanted people to read it in a few hours, and I wanted 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds to be able to read it, to distill this concept of surrender in a simple way that anybody could read. And so it's an easy read, but don't be fooled. I think it will stir some things. So Amazon, it's available there. If people want to know more about my work, my main website, kuteblackson.com, you can find out more there. Depending on people listen to the conversation, twice a year I do a very special transformational event to Bali. It's 12 days in Bali with me, where I really take you through a process of surrendering, a process of healing, a process of transformation experientially. That's really powerful. The next one is July the 28th through August the 8th, www.boundlessblissbali.com. That's boundlessblissbali.com. And my podcast, Soul Talk, and Instagram, Kute Blackson, Facebook, Kute Love Now.
Bali. Wow, that's pretty special. That's pretty cool. I hope that's a magical experience of surrender. I'm sure it will be. Kute, I just want to thank you so much for coming on Integrative Mystic. This has been just what we intended it to be, and more, because we surrendered. And I really do hope folks tuning in check out Kute's book. It was just so inspiring, and it really actually resonated with me.
Awesome.
Like at the right perfect moment. This was like the message I needed to hear. So I just want to thank you, Kute. And thank you, Spirit, for bringing me Kute and this book. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in, and we will see you next video show session. I am going to end this interview right now. Wasn't that a great interview with Kute Blackson? Remember to surrender. We got to do it in the beginning, in the end, in the middle, when all else fails, or even before things are forcing you to surrender. Remember to surrender. Something I need to hear as well. Let's now tune into the energy for the week ahead. This is for the week of June 11th, 2023. We've got New Moon and Father's Day coming up next weekend. But tuning into the collective energy for this week, and just any messages that want to come through that Spirit wants to relay to us. I'm feeling like there might be some social shifting this week, shifting of people, situations, shifting of the social energy. Might be some changes. I'll pull 3 cards. What do we need to know for this week ahead? So before I'm even pulling cards, that's just a general energy I get. I also feel like there's maybe a clearing up and a sort of a clearing of cloudiness and more clarity. Okay, so we've got King of Pentacles, 7 of Wands, and the Hanged Man for our tarot cards. Yes, so I feel like this week we're getting down to business. It feels very intellectual and organized, that it's a good week to be intellectual and use our organizational powers. And it feels like it's just a motivation to get to work this week and motivation to action, especially in the beginning of the week. I feel like there might be some things that just collectively fall away. There's some things that fall by the wayside or don't seem to be working, and we're able to overcome obstacles and move forward as we're letting go of what's not appropriate to focus on in this moment. And that's part of the organization. And I feel like that's also part of maybe a reorganization of people. For some of us this week, it's sort of a reorganization of who is in sync with us and maybe who's not, and accepting someone might not be, or some people or groups or organizations might not be in sync with us. And we're realizing that and kind of reorganizing and finding ways to be in sync with the people who are in harmony with us. So don't resist change. You can move forward more easily by accepting the truth of what your own intuition and higher guidance is navigating you towards. I want to pull a clarifying card. Yeah, Queen of Cups. the Hangman. So I feel like the Queen of Cups is guiding us to be self-reliant and find the balance between being self-reliant and receiving help and care from others. I feel like people are going to be having intuitive experiences this week, a lot of intuitive experiences, and it might feel as though uncomfortable in some social situations. It might feel overwhelming. There's also some emotions that we're going to have to deal with. So I feel like the Queen of Cups is speaking to the energy of self-awareness, of learning to deal with our emotions, of learning to deal with if there are some shifts and changes or realizations in our social life. The Hanged Man. I feel like the Hangman is guiding us to let go, caring so much what other people think, and shift our perspective, let go of maybe some of those shoulds, and shift our perspective to the truth. It might be hard to see the truth this week, is kind of, I feel like, what I'm circling around. And it might be hard to admit perhaps the truth or some intuitions that we're having. So know that if you have some intuitions, they're worth trusting. Trust that as changes are happening in your social life and the bigger social scene, that there is a collective shift towards evolution here, and to trust the process and avoid controlling or people pleasing or trying to please others in order to get acceptance. We've got Gabriel coming through. So might get some intuitive messages. Gabriel is very intuitive, associated with water. You might be, and here we have the Queen of Cups. So there's a big water emphasis this week. So you might be dealing with some emotions. You might be getting some really strong intuitions. But it's funny, it's also a week, I mean, the sun is still in Gemini, it's also a week of organization and mind. So balance all of those functions in your psyche, your thinking, your feeling, your sensing, your intuiting, and allow yourself to be helped. There's a divine surrender that wants to happen in your life this week. Surrender to your higher power, ask for help, trust when the intuitions and guidance comes. And this can help you achieve a whole new level of awareness and whole new world. That's the Hangman turned upside down, right? We're seeing things from a different perspective. It's a doorway to another realm of consciousness. And I believe we do have that this week. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to my show, my friend. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to check out the other amazing podcasts on mindbodyspirit.fm. And I will check out my website, creativepsychestudio.com, and all my stuff that I have going on in my YouTube channel, Creative Psyche Studio. And I will see you next group video or session. Take care.